Hey you guys, I want to just go over a few things on this confirmation for four horns and just kind of show you what I was thinking as I was doing this thing. It's not always one way to do something, but I think this worked out pretty good. So as far as the form goes, this is the bebop era, Charlie Parker tune. So I just started with a short 4-bar intro basically for the piano. And that would be typical of what they did back then. But the basic things I want to cover here are the main points are planing, chromatic planing basically, voice leading, repeated notes is an issue, and trying to do as much stepwise motion as possible. Also cross voicings and 5/7 to 1 very quick substitution. So let's get into this. This is in concert pitch. So what you'll need to do when you voice out a bebop tune or some, a line like this. Basically, I'm not thinking of closed or open voicings. I get questions, about open voicings, closed voicings. I really don't think about that so much. I just think about what's going on at the time and what has to go on in the very near future. In other words, the next measure or the next note. So I'm thinking up and down, which is harmonically, and then I'm also thinking melodically going forward. So you have to balance the two. It's like having one in one hand and one in the other and balancing them out. So what I did was I just took the lead line here in the trumpet and I voiced it down how a good voicing would be. So this is F major 9. You notice I got the 9th, the 5th, the 3rd, and the 7th and the 3rd. Okay, so there's that voicing. Moving on, I voiced it right down. It ended up being a nice voicing in fourths. Going back to the same note, I just went back to the same voicing. So if you went through this and just went through each vertical voicing and then kind of figured out exactly how I did that, you'd see that it's pretty obvious that I either did planing or some type of thing where the voices move very smoothly. Each line moves very smoothly, and then each voicing vertically sounds good unto itself. So here's a matter of planing right here. So I've got this F major 9. All I did was, because the melody note goes up, it's no longer in an F major. It's no longer in an F major chord. So we'll just plane it back up and back down. And it's real simple. Remember that at this tempo, the ear can't pick up every little thing, but as long as you don't have anything really weird stick out, it should sound pretty smooth. Here's the next thing. Notice that we've got a chromatic line here in the melody from E to G, going up chromatically. All I did was I went to the E minor 7 flat 5 chord and I figured out, well, how could I basically voice that out to where I could start a minor third down and chromatically playing right up to that. So these voicings are not, well, this one in the middle here is an F6, but that is not in an F chord, and neither is that. Well, that's kind of an F7 flat 9 kind of thing, but I didn't think that way. I just thought, well, let's go from this chord, E minor 7 flat 5, and you notice that is actually in close position. And then I just moved it down 3 half steps, and I got that. And then I just filled in the blanks. Okay, so going on, hope that makes sense. Going on, we have a big leap here in the melody. So I always want to try to see if I can voice the chord as it is. In other words, E minor 7 flat 5. And the first thing to look at is the melody note, a chord tone. Well, this is a chord tone. It's the 7th actually. So because the melody jumps, you're going to have inherently the other voices jump a little bit as well. So I voiced this down, D, B flat, E, and D. And so you got all the chord tones there, and you notice that most everybody doesn't have a bigger leap than even the melody. Same thing here, B flat, G, D, and E. Now here's the cross voicing right there. Because I don't want repeated notes, that's a big one in this type of thing. You don't want repeated notes if you can avoid it. Sometimes you have to do it. But in the middle of a line, it's even worse. So what I did was I cross-voiced the trombone and the tenor. And that works fine. So he has He has this line going up and back. He has this line that goes back and forth. So it's still easier to play than a bunch of repeated notes. So always keep that in mind. Okay, here we got the chord changes to A7 flat 9. We've got an A, which is the root. Now, because I didn't want to do I suppose I could have done an F sharp there and got the 13th in there, but I did a sharp 11 right there because I wanted to have, the voice leading be very smooth. So I've got the flat 9, the 3rd, sharp 11, and the root there. Moving on, this should actually be a C sharp there, but I did a unison C sharp there. One reason I did that was because the trumpet's so low, I didn't want to move everyone way down in the staff and get a muddier sound. And also, to the ear, it has a little freshness when all of a sudden you change from 4-part to 1-part for one note. So I had a unison right there, just for 1/8 note. Moving back out to a D minor 7, I actually, you can see that's the A7 flat 9 still. I decided to do that because I wanted to do kind of a delayed resolution to the D minor 7. You'll see that's in close voicing if you want to think that way. Okay, so moving on, I'm not going to go through all this, but you'll see that I basically did that same concept. I avoided, I focused on voice leading each individual part. I didn't try to have any, when I did have repeated notes, I tried to see if I could do any cross voicing. Now you have to cross voice between players that are next to each other. So you can't cross voice, obviously, you can't cross voice trombone and trumpet. So alto and tenor could cross voice, and tenor and trombone can cross voice. You can't cross voice a melody note. I wouldn't try that because the ear is hearing that trumpet is playing the melody. Okay, so going on, you'll see G13. Now notice that's a G13 right up without the root. B, D, F, and A. Moving down to a C minor 7, I made it C minor 9 right there. And a lot of times I chose those things because of the voice leading. Now here's another spot where I did a cross voice between the trombone and tenor. Notice that the tenor is below the trombone right there. And I remember working on that for a little bit. He's actually lower there as well, and then they break apart. Now when you listen to this, you will not be able to hear that. It's going along too fast. The brain can't, most brains can't, determine that change in the timbre of the instruments that quickly. And so, keep in mind that if this were a ballad, it may be different, but we're talking about a bebop tune. Okay, so F plus 7, there's an F plus 7. That's I think, close voicing right there. And then here's another planing situation. Notice that this one is not part of an F plus 7 chord, but I wanted to plane. I wanted to make this a B flat 13 basically, and I wanted to plane right upwards and back. So you'll notice the downbeat is actually if you look at those notes, it's an F7 sharp 9 sharp 11 and then back to B flat 13. So that works because we have a 5-to-1, 5-7-to-1. It's an altered 5-7 going to the 1 chord right there on the second eighth note. Here I just walked it down a step and back up. So this is actually an A flat 13 chord right there. So the whole point of this really is don't get too wrapped up in exactly the chord. You try to work with what you're given here, and based on the melody note, and then how you, so every eighth note you're going to have to make a decision on, basically, in this type of situation. Okay, here's the first part where I jumped into all unison. And because that gives a little bit, it's in octaves actually, but it gives a little bit of freshness. And also, this particular line is pretty disjunct. And I think everybody jumping around, I think unison tends to be better. And then it actually, because this G13 sharp 11 is a little bit of a surprise, you go from unison to all of a sudden, we got a B there, so I had to use the root on the 7th, and there's the sharp 11. Normally, you don't have alter tones that low, but in this situation, we only have 4 horn players. It's not too low because it's not below middle C, It's getting there, but that's the only thing I could come up with there, because there's no other way to get that sharp 11 in there, and I thought it needed to be in there. So here's you can see on the second beat here I did just a straight G13, and then I added the sharp 11 there again. That's a C sharp, D flat's the same, and so we have the 3rd, sharp 11, 13th, and 9th. I could have actually done. I could have done the 7th there. I should have. Yeah. So we have 9th, 7th. So even going through this again, I thought I might find things, and there's 1. So let's change it to that, and so it's actually going to come out better. But it's so quick. I don't think most people can hear that. So anyway, moving on. Here's another planing situation. Notice how I did a C7 flat 9, 5th. I needed to have the 5th there because I needed to walk it down from, I suppose I could have had this could actually be an A and be the 13th, but I didn't want that because of that tritone leap there. I didn't want a tritone leap. So I did the 5th. Generally I'll leave out the 5th and 7th chords. But in that case, it worked out. So these, when you talk about rules, that really, there are certain rules that are almost 99% applicable, but sometimes you just got to, do something different and break that rule. So you'll notice that the planing here is by half step right down to that chord. Okay, same type of thing. We move on. Okay, let's go on. You can go through this if you want. Play it slow in finale or whatever. So the bridge, I thought, well, maybe we could do something different, not just have 4. So I did a unison. I did kind of a contrapuntal thing here with the tenor sax, trombone, trumpet, and alto sax plays the melody, and we have a counter line here in the other parts. And then this particular one, I actually dropped down to 1 instrument because of this is such a disjunct, probably the most disjointed line of the entire tune. I dropped everybody out, just had the alto player play that. And I may have in the 3-horn, I may just have the trumpet player play that. I'm not sure. It's not an easy line to play. It's pretty tricky. So he brings back in everybody, just like before, and we ended out. Now I wanted to do bring back that introduction and kind of have an interlude, but I did voice it out, kind of a little miniature interlude, shout chorus / shout chorus, whatever, or shout before the solos. And so then we have a solo. I did write out an alto solo there, and then we have open solos, and this kind of just brings in the soloist after the first one, kind of an interlude. It lasts for 4 bars, and it can be between the solos as well. No backgrounds. Remember, this is bebop style, so I suppose I could have had some backgrounds, but I want it to be open and have it be just open solos because that's kind of the nature of the beast. Okay, and then after solos we move on, go all the way back to the tune. So although it is a 4-horn arrangement, it kind of stays with the whole concept of the small group and everybody improvising and so on and so forth. So I think we killed 2 birds here, and the lines are good enough, I think, and not weird enough to where the players, your players should be able to play them pretty good. And then we went into just this very, very short coda. Every recording I ever heard of this pretty much just ends the tune on a G flat. That should be G flat. Whoops. G flat 6/9. I hate when I do this. Okay. Oh, they're G flat 6. I just had it wrong. So I'm sure your piano player will figure that out. But anyway, that's the tune. And so listen to it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.